Welcome. This yoga practice will include the yin postures of butterfly pose, low flying dragon pose, shoelace pose, and a prone twist on a prop pose that I'm going to temporarily rename Tellus Pose. So useful props, extra padding like pillows and blankets, and a yoga bolster if you have one. Now, if you don't have a bolster, you can always make do with pillows and with blankets or other soft padding. I'm going to talk about one of the smaller planets closest to the sun today. The theme for class will be planet Earth. This practice begins by finding a seat that feels stable and grounded to you. It could be sitting cross-legged like this, but maybe there's something that works better for you. Sitting in a chair or in some other way that brings a sense of stability and of rootedness. When you find that seat, maybe for a moment, grow your torso long and expansive. That requires a light toning in the core and bringing your spine to neutral. You can roll your shoulders up and back. And then bring your mental focus to softening your upper body, particularly your face and your head. So if your jaw is tight, release your jaw. Release the muscles around your eyes and around your ears. Soften your tongue. And remind yourself of your own intention for practice, why you're here. Maybe that will calm the random thoughts down there and bring some focus here as you watch your breath. So for a while, your normal natural breath, just notice it. Notice the inhales, the exhales. Maybe visualize the inhales as the daytime and exhales as nighttime. So the breath is a cycle. Just like planet Earth makes one revolution around its axis every 24 hours. We call that a day. And part of that period it spends in the light of the sun, and part of that period it spends in the dark of night. And you can think of any kind of cycling process as day and as night. So that's maybe the first aspect of this planet Earth that we might think about during our practice today. You can just continue with this normal natural breathing, or if you would like, you can try this modified form of alternate nostril breathing, which actually doesn't really require much happening with your nostrils, just more happening with your hands, with your mental focus here. So maybe begin to slow and deepen your breath. Nothing that's uncomfortable, but something that's a little bit slower cadence, that's still accessible for you. Take your hands, wherever they might be, place them palm face up on whatever surface is in front of you. So for most of us, it's probably going to be the thighs of our legs, or maybe our knees here. And just continue to take those nice, deep, natural breaths here. When you get to your next exhale, at the end of the exhale, gently close your left hand. And then for one cycle of breath, one inhale and one exhale. At the end of the exhale, close the right hand, open the left hand. One cycle of breath there. And then close the left hand, open the right hand. Continue this cycling. So for one breath cycle, open one hand and close the other. And don't worry if you lose track or get out of sync with yourself. Just start over again. There's no wrong way to do this. Just gently start over until you find a rhythm that works for you. Maybe you have to speed up, maybe you have to slow down. Now you can continue this, or if you wish, you can add the extra mental task of whatever hand is open or breath you're on. Shift your mental focus to just focus on that side of your body. So if my right hand's open, I'm thinking about the right side of my body. The left hand is open, I shift my focus to the left side. See how that works for you. Now, for some of you, you might find this rather strange that we're focusing on the right side of our body and the left side of our body. So if you want something other visualization to focus on, come back to this idea of the earth spinning on its axis and creating this change of day and night. Choose one hand to be day. Choose the other hand to be night. Choose one hand to be light and one hand to be dark. And then notice the alternation between light and dark. Just notice that. Notice the concept as it plays inside of your head as you do this breathing exercise. Maybe a couple more cycles here. Or maybe you're getting done with this. And so if you are, when you're ready, open up both hands. Bring your focus back to the center of your body. Continue this idea of darkness and light. Because when the earth spins on its axis, half of the earth is always in sunlight. Half of the earth is always in darkness. So these two contrasting polarities always exist simultaneously, side by side, in a dynamic way, because of course the earth spins. So what part is in light and dark is constantly changing. One more breath here. And then we'll do a little bit of a warm up before we get into the long held yin postures. So from here, we'll do a little bit of a yang warm up called cobra cycling. So make your way slowly onto your belly, onto the floor with your legs comfortably extended out behind you. So by comfortably extended, I mean, don't worry, bring them as close together, as far apart as you would like them to be comfortable here. So your lower torso is very rooted and grounded into the floor. Hands are either on either side of your rib cage, face down, rooting into the ground, and elbows are in close. So you just start out kind of resting your head, maybe your chin on the ground. And then when you come to an inhale, slightly tone through your core, use the muscles in the back of your torso only. And then see how far you can try to lift your torso up off of the ground. For some of us, maybe we don't go anywhere. Some of us, maybe we just barely make it off of the ground. But you're not using any weight in your arms or your hands. This is called baby cobra. And then go ahead and release, come back down. Maybe you need to take a couple resting breaths after that. We'll do this 3 more times. So you can do baby cobra again, or you can try full cobra. So this time, start with baby cobra. Lift yourself up just with the muscles in the back of your torso. When you stop, then press your hands into the ground. Use your arms to start bringing yourself up a little bit higher, or maybe a lot higher. Go to that place where you start feeling some stopping points here. So this is a yang pose. This is cobra. And then very gently lower yourself back down. Give yourself permission to take some rest. So that means arms are released, torso is released. We'll do this 2 more times. So on your next inhale, lift yourself up into your preferred version of cobra pose. Maybe hold for a breath and notice the effort. Notice the sensations that are created in this back bend. Slowly lower yourself down. Cycle through night, cycle through a resting breath. And then bring yourself back up one last time. So one more version of your version of cobra here. Maybe stay for a breath, feel the pose, this yang pose, and then very gently lower yourself back down to the ground. And then slowly, when you're ready, bring yourself up. Come to a comfortable seat. Legs out in front. So that was the warm-up. We'll move into the first yin posture. This first yin posture is called butterfly pose. So either sitting on the floor or sitting on some props to give you a little bit of height underneath your sits bones. Bend both knees, bring your feet together, lower your knees out to either side, and make a diamond pattern, if you will, with your shins and your thighs. Heels can be fairly far from your hips, although some of you might really like having your heels close, in which case go ahead and have your heels close. If your knees are a little bit achy in this position, you can try moving your heels out farther, or you can put props underneath your knees. In fact, I find some people find it handy if they put a block in between their feet so that there's space in between their feet. These are all kinds of good modifications you can do for butterfly. This is the beginning of butterfly. You have a choice here. If you don't like forward folding, you can just maintain the leg shape. You're getting the nice gentle hip opener in the legs here. But if you would like to fold forward, maybe start out with a yang attitude. Grow up tall through your torso. And then hinge forward from your hip sockets. And your hip sockets are clear down here. So this is where you're trying to hinge from. When you don't go anymore from there, then take up a yin attitude of allowance and acceptance. So you're relaxing the muscles now in your torso. And you're letting your spine just round and lower due to gravity, rather than muscular extension here. So muscles are soft, they're quiet, and wherever you stop in this pose, that's your edge. Unless it's painful and then you want to back yourself up to where you're not experiencing that pain anymore. This is where props come in handy. So if you only go forward a little bit, and you don't like that hanging sensation, then take something that's fairly stiff, that's the height of where you stop, and then you can just kind of rest your head on that. Or you can build some padding here to rest your head on wherever your height is. So you're not trying to emulate anybody but yourself here in these postures. So we'll stay here for about 3 minutes or so. And by the way, it's okay to also just hang in midair too. So this is butterfly pose. Notice your breath. Notice the subtle physical sensations you're feeling in this posture. But yoga is a holistic practice, so it's okay to also notice your thoughts, your emotions, all the different aspects of you, which is a complicated mix. And in the beginning, it's hard to see, feel, notice all of them, which is why in the West here, we start with the physical sensations. See if you can notice the physical sensations first, and maybe adjust your posture if they're too strenuous and creating trauma or pain, or if you're feeling nothing and you're bored, then maybe you want to go a little bit deeper into this posture. So I'll go through the 3 principles of a yin practice. The first principle is called finding your edge, and that's different for each one of us. Your edge is that place where you move your body into a particular shape, its shape, where it begins to stop, feel resistance, it feels pressure, it maybe feels uncomfortable, but it's not trauma, it's not injury, it's not pain. And that's one of the explorations, because when we're beginning in yoga, sometimes we don't know what's the difference between discomfort and pain. That's the big question. And that's what we're exploring. So finding your edge, not necessarily that easy, but maybe we can try here. Second principle is called staying. It's called stillness. It's called generating the mental focus, the fortitude and the patience that one now needs to allow it to be okay to not go anywhere or not do anything else. It's like the doing is the residing in the posture, and that's what needs to happen here. It takes a lot of mental focus to override our ego. Our egos, which probably want to always be doing something active, and convincing our egos that this stillness is an act. Third principle is time. Let some time pass. We let the earth spin a bit, at least for a few minutes. Maybe here we'll go 5 more breaths.
So reestablish what you feel here. See if you need to reestablish your edge. So if you found your muscles secretly engaged to freeze you in place, allow your muscles to relax and see what happens. Maybe you go a little bit deeper. Maybe you go a little bit less deep. That's probably your true edge, is the edge where your muscles are relaxed. This is where props are handy, because sometimes the muscles engage to protect a joint. If that's happening, use a prop to protect that joint. Let the muscles have a break. So the muscles can do other things at other times here, but this is a yin practice. It's the emphasis here. One more breath. And then if you folded forward, first thing to do is come up slowly. So maybe use your hands and your arms. Plant your hands on the ground. Use your hands and your arms to press your torso up. And then when it gets up, lengthen it out. Maybe you want to do little gentle twists to work out the achiness in the spine, if there is any. At some point, maybe your legs and your hips are done with butterfly. So gently draw the knees up, extend the legs out, maybe point and flex the feet a few times here. And then when you're ready, make your way onto hands and knees. Come into a tabletop pose. If this bothers your knees, be on the floor like this. This is the time to bring in some extra padding. Put it under your knees now, because we're going to be on our hands and knees for a while. So if your knees are liking that extra softness, then by all means, create it now. Here. We'll do a little bit of cat and cow rolling before we get into the next yin posture. So from a nice, stable, rooted table pose, let's start with cat, since we just did a forward bend here. Let's do a back bend here. So sink your belly down. Move your sternum forward and up. Tilt your tailbone up to create an arch in your spine, an extended spine here in cat pose. And then move yourself slowly and gently into a cow pose, and then a few more cycles, kind of at your own pace and at your own rate, just to feel the difference between cat cow. This is another cycle. This is another night and day. Which is what posture feels like sunlight to you, what posture feels like night to you, in this very dynamic dance here. When you're ready, come back to a nice neutral spine. We'll move into the next yin posture, which is low flying dragon. Now we'll start in regular dragon, and maybe that's where we stay. So from here, bring your right foot up in between your hands. Maybe inch the left knee back, or leave the left knee where it is if it's on some comfortable padding. Allow your hips to sink and soften, torso softens here. This is basic dragon pose. Now if your hands make it down onto the ground, that's fine. If they don't reach the ground and that feels unstable, put some books or some blocks underneath your hands here. If head can stay lifted, that's yang, but you can let your head hang, that's yin, but maybe that doesn't feel good, so you can use some props like some books or some blocks to rest your head on. Now this is basic dragon. If this is too intense, then you can move into upside down dragon. Slowly make your way out of dragon. If you want to try upside down dragon, come onto your back. Left leg's extended. Bring the right knee in. Maybe this is enough. You stay here. Maybe clasp your shin. Maybe clasp the bottom of your foot and let your knee sink to the ground. So this is upside down dragon. For some of us, we'll get more benefit and more use out of doing this one than dragon pose. Otherwise, if dragon is feeling okay, can stay here in dragon, or can move into low flying dragon. Low flying dragon is bring this right foot out a few inches to the right side. Sweep the right arm on the inside of the right foot. This is stage number 1 of low flying dragon. You can stay here, arms locked, so you can kind of soften your torso and your shoulders, or maybe move yourself down onto your forearms. And if your forearms don't reach to the ground, this is where you get some books to put your forearms on. And then we'll stay here for a few more minutes in low flying dragon here. So I believe it was in the 1990s that NASA launched a space probe to study the planet Jupiter, one of the outer planets, one of the giant gas balls in the outer solar system. The probe was named Galileo, after the famous astronomer Galileo, obviously, who discovered the moons around Jupiter. Now it's hard to get a space probe out to Jupiter. It takes a lot of finessing and fancy flying by the folks at NASA. It's not just a big rocket. And in fact, this probe had to fly around the inner solar system for quite a long time before it could get out, and had to do what are called flybys. So what we do to get our space probes out far into the solar system is we have to slingshot them around other planets. And we had to do this with Galileo. So they had to fly by Venus. And they also had to fly by other inner planets. And one of the inner planets that it had to fly by, they decided to do something very interesting with. So they've never done this before, and they had this idea. Well, it was a space probe designed to study Jupiter. But what if we took this space probe and studied another planet as if it was the alien world that we were actually going to? So when it flew by this other planet, NASA switched on all of its scientific instrumentation and pointed it at this planet that it was flying by on the way to Jupiter, and took on the objective idea of, okay, let's say that this is a planet that we know nothing about. It's the first time that we have ever studied it ever. And we have this space probe that we can study it with. What will we find out about this planet? And that's exactly what they did when this probe flew by its own home planet. It's the planet of Earth here. It's about 6 or 7 more long breaths here in your version of Dragon. And if you're done with Dragon, allow yourself to be done with it as part of the yoga practices, giving yourself permission to come out of the posture early if you need to, or staying longer if you need to. So they took Galileo and they looked at this strange inner rocky planet, and they tried to figure out what they could learn from it. Now, the probe was meant to study Jupiter. It wasn't meant to detect any kind of life form, so it didn't have any kind of complicated instrumentation that could directly detect life. It had other kinds of instruments on it. Just one more breath here, and then we're done exploring this posture. We can slowly come out. So bring yourself up to basic dragon if you're in low flying dragon. The counter pose I'm going to suggest is downward facing dog, which is a yang posture. Plant both hands, tuck the back toe, lift the back knee, and see if you can slowly press yourself up into downward facing dog. It doesn't have to be graceful, but just notice. Root through your hands and your feet. Maybe legs are bent. Torso is long. Core is slightly toning here in downward facing dog. You can maybe do a little bit of taking your dog for a walk here, or something else to work out the kinks. But we're psyching ourselves up for the other side of whatever type of dragon pose we want to do here. So I'm suggesting low flying dragon, but maybe regular dragon is good. So when you're ready, come back to hands and knees. And now it's the left foot that comes up in between the hands. Inch the right knee back here. Decide if regular dragon is okay. Maybe upside down dragon on this side is better. Or bring yourself into low flying dragon on this side here. Your version. You can stay up on straight arms if you need to. Or even go back to regular dragon. It's okay to back off on a pose. That's a nice thing to do if you find yourself going too deeply and are in the zone of injury here. And then once you settle, notice your breath. Notice your sensations. Maybe adjust your edge because of what you've noticed. And then settle again here. So as Galileo flew past Earth, it detected these large lowlands that were perfectly flat. And its spectrometer detected large amounts of water, and it also detected a surface temperature of somewhere in the vicinity of about 30 degrees Celsius. All of these little bits of information add up to the fact that this must be large pools of liquid water, of H2O. And then those, of course, were the oceans. It also noticed higher topography that seemed to be not made of water, seemed to be made of some sort of rock here. And in some areas of these higher pieces of land or forms or topography, the spectrometers, the widespan color spectrometers noticed a sharp absorption curve in the red end of the visible spectrum. Of course, that's all fancy scientific talk for if you were looking at something that had a red absorption drop off, it would appear to be tinted green. So there would be this strange green tint on a lot of the land features of this planet. Other things that they detected would be in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, atmosphere that's mainly nitrogen here, white frozen ice caps, and also water vapor. So the intriguing thing about this place is there's water exists in all three phases, which is sort of unusual. Usually places are too hot and too cold for that to happen. This seems to be a place where all three can exist simultaneously. We have about 6 more breaths here on this side of low-flying dragon here. The plasma wave detector on Galileo detected a relatively strong magnetic fields, and it also detected radio waves. Some of those radio waves, the frequency was very constant, and it was modulated. That's very interesting. I don't know many things in nature that have such a constant frequency that's modulated. So very, very interesting indeed. And then Galileo continued on its way to its primary target, which was Jupiter, and spent several years studying Jupiter here. We're done with low-flying dragon on this side. So slowly bring yourself up. Slowly bring yourself out. You can find different ways to bring yourself out of dragon. Maybe you really want to extend that front leg. Or maybe you would like to come up in downward facing dog again. So however you would like, or maybe some cat and cows here. So a little bit of counter time to work out the kinks after that long hold in your version of dragon, whatever that was for you. Just notice the rebound here. And then get ready for the next yin posture. So the next yin posture is both sides of shoelace pose here. So you'll come to seated again, legs out in front. So it starts out like banana pose, or not banana pose, butterfly pose. Except it won't be butterfly pose, it'll be shoelace. Both legs are extended. Bend the left knee and stack the left knee on top of the right knee. This is called half shoelace. See how this feels? Maybe it feels wonderful if you want to stay here. From half shoelace, if you want to go into full shoelace, bend the bottom knee, the right knee. And then try to stack the knees. Now if one knee is a little bit achy, use a prop to kind of soften that knee. Maybe it's the bottom knee, so the prop goes underneath the bottom knee here. If shoelace doesn't work for you,
i.e., if you're feeling the outside of the hip opener, but it's a little bit too intense, you want that sensation pressure, but not so much, you can try what's called eye of the needle or thread the needle. So eye of the needle is make your way onto your back. Both knees are bent. Bring the left leg in, put the left heel on the right thigh, left knee goes out wide, and then bring the right leg in, and then hold the right leg in place with your hands behind your thigh or in front of your shin. That's a nice alternative. Give shoelace. A little bit too intense. So come back to shoelace here. So this is primarily a hip opener, and for a lot of us, we're maybe feeling this in the outside of one or both hips. I think a lot of us are feeling it in the outside of the leg that's on top, but we're all unique and diverse, so each one of us feels it a little bit differently. You can stay here and just enjoy the hip opener. If you want to add a forward fold like we did in butterfly, then slowly begin to fold forward. Again, any amount. If the folding forward is getting too much into the knees, put your hands on the ground, push your weight back to get the pressure back into your hips. Maybe that's enough too. So maybe you just want to stop wherever you're at. You can put props under to help prop your head or your torso up as you see fit here. So find your shoelace here, and then we'll stay. This is a nice yin posture. If you're completely propped, then you can completely relax your muscles here and really take on a yin attitude here. And then we'll stay. We'll stay for a few more minutes here in shoelace. So the Earth is the 5th largest planet of the 8 major planets in our solar system. It's the 5th largest because it's small. It's much smaller than all of the gas giants that live out in the outer solar system. But it is the largest of the small rocky planets that exist closest to the sun. So the Earth is much more massive than both Mercury and Mars, and slightly bigger than its sister planet, Venus. So this will become important as we kind of look at Earth in its very, very fundamental and basic terms as to why Earth developed life. Turns out size helps in that it was to Earth's advantage to be a little bit bigger than all of the other planets. And the reason that is because it was bigger, it maintained its hot, molten internal core. The reason why that is important is because that molten core, as the Earth spins once a day, creates a very healthy magnetic field around the planet. Earth and the other terrestrial planets very close to the sun. So Mercury is only 36 million miles from the sun. Earth is 93 million miles. Now it turns out that that's not a magical number. Venus and Mars are both in ranges from the sun that they could have very temperate climates just like Earth. It turns out that they don't, and there's reasons they don't. But Earth, it's helpful that Earth is not as close to the sun as Mercury is. So that's helpful too. The other planets, because they're smaller and because of their rotation rates, they don't have as strong a magnetic field around the planet as Earth does. And that makes life less possible just because they don't have strong magnetic fields. Mars has a solid core, cooled a long time ago. Its magnetic field disappeared. Mercury, not big enough and doesn't rotate fast enough to have much of a magnetic field, although it has a little bit of one. Venus has a small magnetic field. It's got a strange rotation rate. So its rotation rate is longer than its year. it rotates even though it might have a molten core similar to Earth, it rotates so slowly. It doesn't have much of a magnetic field. So why, oh why, am I making a big deal about the magnetic field? By the way, we're done with this side of half shoelace here, or full shoelace. So slowly bring yourself up. Bring your hands behind your torso. Lean back on your hands. Lengthen out through your torso so that you can release your legs. Do this slowly so that you can feel the rebound. And maybe do little motions to work out, bring this blood circulation back. Again, my favorite counter pose for this is windshield wipers. So you can bend your knees, bring your feet on the floor pretty wide apart, and then very slowly shift your knees from side to side. This the windshield wiper action here in windshield wipers. And then when you feel ready, legs come out long here, and it's the other side of shoelace now. So now it's the right knee. If you already did the right knee, do the other right knee. Stack it on top of the left knee, and can practice half shoelace if you're liking this, or bend the bottom knee, come into full shoelace, or maybe thread the needle on this side, or maybe props where you need them here. Can stay just seated if you're getting enough of a hip opener. If you want to increase the hip opener and get a little bit of a forward fold in, then you fold forward again on this side to wherever your stopping point is, not mine. So you're not trying to mimic me. I'm just trying to show you what the shape looks like for me, but your shape might look very different for this posture. And then settle here. So some quiet, some stillness so that you can catch your breath and notice your sensations here. So it turns out the surface of our planet gets most of its energy from the sun. So that's really good. So there's a little bit of energy that bubbles up from the interior of the Earth. It comes out through magma fields and volcanoes and tectonic movements of the land and geothermal events. But for the most part, the surface of the Earth is driven energetically by the radiation for the sun from our parent star, which is a wonderful thing, but it might be too much of a good thing. So if the Earth didn't protect us from all of the radiation, including the more energetic stuff coming from the sun, known as the solar wind, it would be hard for any form of life to exist on the surface. Our magnetic field, the magnetic field of the Earth, is strong enough to deflect the higher energetic particles. So it deflects it by just getting these charged particles get trapped in the magnetic field. And they get redirected towards the poles. And then as they hit the atmosphere, they excite the atoms in the atmosphere, and we see those particles as the northern lights and the southern lights, the aurora, that are so beautiful in the extreme northern and southern hemispheres. That's Earth's magnetic field at work, saving us from all this detrimental radiation that's coming from the sun. We're liking the visible light and the infrared light that comes from the sun, that gives us the light and the heat energy that plants need to grow. And plants are critical. We need photosynthesis plants in order for all the other life to grow here as well. Here, about 5 or 6 more breaths here on shoelace, if it's okay. Not okay, you can come out. It turns out the interesting thing about Earth, since life developed on Earth, life itself protects itself. So there's another type of radiation that can be very damaging to life and to DNA, and that's ultraviolet radiation. Our magnetic field of Earth doesn't protect us from that, but the ozone layer does. Now the ozone layer is made up of oxygen atoms in oxygen molecules. And all of that oxygen was created by life. So early in the formation of the earth, when life didn't exist, there was not much oxygen around. The free oxygen that we know and love and that we as humans need to survive was all created by life. In fact, the whole surface of our planet has been terraformed by billions of years of life. Many of the mountain ranges that we see are former ridges, former sedimentary layers of billions of years of life here. Slowly bring yourself up. Maybe growing your spine long, lean yourself back. Gently to undo your shoelace legs. And then maybe pointing flex your feet a few times, roll them around, maybe do windshield wipers. Maybe you're thinking of some other kind of exercise that you would really love to do to work out the kinks of that pose. And then do that for a few breaths. And then when you're ready, move into this next posture that I have deliberately named Tellus Pose. It's prone twist on some sort of padding. I'm going to use this yoga bolster here, but if you don't have a yoga bolster, that's okay. Make some padding out of blankets and pillows. But place the bolster off to one side. Sit next to the bolster with one hip outside of the hip up against the bolster. So this is my right hip. So I got my right outside of my right hip up against the short end of the bolster. Long end is pointing to the side. And then bend your legs, sweep your shins back so that your knees are pointing 90 degrees to the bolster here. And then for a moment, grow yourself up tall and then twist your spine. So maybe start with your upper torso, twist and face the bolster with your upper chest, your upper torso. And then use your hands and your arms to slowly work yourself down onto the bolster. So notice you've worked your torso into a twist here. When you get to your head and your neck, experiment with turning your head and your neck in the direction opposite your knees. So in this case, I turn my head and my neck over to the right. Now, and then rest it on the bolster. If that creates too much pain or discomfort, then just turn your head the same direction as the knees here. So we're most concerned about a twist going on here in the main torso. And if it's okay to get a twist up in the neck here, that's fine. If it's not okay, then you can just not worry about the neck here. Try to find something that you can really soften and sink into. So I've named this pose for this class Tellus Pose. And the reason why I've done that is because Tellus is the Roman name for the goddess of earth. We maybe recognize the Greek name. So the planets are named after gods and goddesses in Roman mythology. Some of them are named after gods and goddesses in Greek mythology, since in the Romans just borrowed basically the gods and goddesses from Greek mythology and renamed them. Jupiter is Zeus. Jupiter is the Roman name for Zeus. Mars is the Roman name for Ares. Venus is the Roman name for Aphrodite. The Greek name for the goddess Earth is actually Gaia. And the Roman translation of Gaia, i.e. the Earth goddess, is actually Tellus. That was the original name. Now maybe most of us don't recognize this word Tellus, because there's a more modern version. A few years later, the Romans modernized the word Tellus into Terra. So some of us maybe know
her as Terra. And of course, Terra is the root word that we use for a lot of different words describing things of Earth. So terra forma. Even the word terrestrial planets, the word terrestrial means rocky planets like the Earth, basically. That's where the word terrestrial comes from. But I'm going back to the original Roman word, which is tellus. So if we were to stick with the theme of naming planets named after Roman gods and goddesses, then Earth should have really been named Tellus here. So we have about another minute here in this twist. Again, for a lot of us, this maybe feels really relaxing and restorative. But if your spine does not twist deeply, and some of ours don't, this could actually get too intense. And if it is, give yourself permission again to either take a less deep twist or come out of the posture and rest. Otherwise, if this is feeling accessible, maybe even comfortable, then the idea is to completely release the tension of all the muscles and let gravity take over. Maybe a couple more breaths here. I'll talk a little bit more about gravity. Surrendering. Basically, we're surrendering to gravity. And you can think of a nice metaphor for gravity, which I'll describe when we get settled into the next side of this. One more breath. When you're feeling ready, use your hands and your arms to slowly lift yourself up. Take your time to unwind from the twist. Take your time to just to gain your bearings and notice the rebound from that side. And then, when you're ready, set up for the other side of this twist. So you can move things around, either move you around or move the props around, the bolster or the pillows. So I'm going to move myself around. So move so that it's your other hip, the outside of the other hip, that's snug against the narrow end of the bolster. Knees are pointing perpendicular to the bolster, shins are swept back. Doesn't matter what orientation your feet are at. It can be whatever works for you here. Go up tall through your torso, turn and face the bolster again, and then inch yourself down onto the bolster. Have that experiment with your head and your neck. Which way does it need to turn? Oh, by the way, you don't have to hold it in place the whole time. It can switch from side to side whenever you need to. Again, the idea is to just let the twist in the rest of the torso sink due to gravity here. And then soften and settle. If you feel your arms in too closed and crunched, maybe spread your arms out enough so that they can be supported by the floor. Once again, settle here. Notice your breath. Allow yourself to soften and sink and surrender. Surrender into whatever padding you're using. Surrender into the support of the floor. In other words, surrender to gravity, and then the floor pushes back up and supports you. The bolster pushes back up and supports you. That's support. That's what we're going for here. So you're surrendering to the complete support of Mother Earth. This is known as gravity. So I like to use the metaphor of most of the time in our yang lifestyles. We're walking, running around. We're using our feet to push Mother Earth away. But the Earth, our home planet, is always trying to give us a hug. The Earth loves us so much that it has this invisible force that it uses to try and give us a hug, and we spend our time always pushing her away. During this pose, maybe you don't have to push her away. You can surrender to that force. Surrender to that hug. For once, let Mother Earth hug you back. And you can act like you're hugging Mother Earth. She's rather big compared to you, so your hug can spread out from arm end to arm end. And say, thank you for having a magnetic field. Thank you for having an ozone layer. Thank you for having liquid water. And thank you for having green plants that produce oxygen so that we can breathe, so that we can be alive and we can feel here. So 3 more breaths on either side. And then when you're feeling ready, or you can stay longer if you want, just up to you, slowly bring yourself up. Maybe take some time to kind of reverberate from that posture. That was the last yin posture, so a little bit of integration before we move into our final posture, our resting pose. So I'm going to suggest bridge cycling here. So a few more back bends, yang back bends. So make your way onto your back. Knees are bent, feet are on the floor about hip width apart. Arms resting on either side of your torso, extended, maybe palms face down, rooted into the ground here. Head and neck are comfortable, shoulders are comfortable. And then maybe try to tip your tailbone to point up towards the ceiling. This rolls the back of your pelvic bone down and lengthens out your lumbar spine, so your lumbar spine actually touches the floor. And then go ahead and roll your pelvic bone forward. So now you're trying to tip your tailbone to point down. The top part of your pelvic bone tries to point up, and you're creating more of a secondary curve in your lumbar spine. Then root through your feet and your shoulders, and on an inhale, use the inhale to lift your hips up off of the floor towards the feet ceiling as far as they go. So this is bridge pose. And then very gently lower yourself back down to the ground. I'll do this a couple more times. So when you're ready with your next inhale and use the power of the inhale to press your hips up towards the ceiling as far as they go. And then on the long exhale, see if you can lower down with control. So 1 vertebra at a time until your hips touch the ground. So one final time. This time will stay for a while. So inhale, reach your hips up, and then see if you can clasp your hands underneath your hips. You can maybe tuck the head of your arm bone underneath your rib cage. Stay here for a few breaths. See if you can use the inhale to expand through the front of your body here and lift your hips even higher. Legs are working hard here. And then when you're ready, release your hands, release your shoulders, lower yourself gently down onto the ground. Bend your knees, draw your knees into your chest, give your knees a nice hug. You can stay here in stillness, or if you want to, gently rock your knees from side to side. And then from here, maybe take a moment to do any other kind of activities or exercises or postures you'd like to do to work out any kind of residual imbalances from that sequence. And now we're ready. Now we're ready to move into an accessible version of resting pose, something that feels stable, something that feels restful, something that feels safe. And you can use as many props as you want to. So if you like blankets, if you like pillows, oh my goodness, grab those here and put them underneath your head or underneath your knees. Or cover up if you're feeling chilly. Fine. Or just lie on the floor like I'm doing here. If this feels stable, if this feels soft, if this feels restful. Once again, use the mental focus of your mind to release tension, muscular tension,
mental tension, emotional tension. See if you can use the focus of your mind and the cadence of your breath to send softness to the places that need some softness. And we're human, so almost always there's somewhere in our being that could use a little bit of extra softness. So this is where we'll stay. Final few minutes of this practice. Eyes are soft. Maybe they're closed, if that's okay. Maybe the face is softened. And this is the time to really notice the environment of this planet that you live on, your immediate environment. You can feel the gravity of the planet pulling you down and then pushing you back with the pressure of whatever you're lying on, the floor, the bolster, pillows. You can feel the temperature of the air around you. You can feel the presence of this large astronomical body that we were born on, that will always be home. And just notice, maybe we're grateful, maybe we're a little bit grateful for all the things this planet has done for us. Maybe we feel that it's a little bit interesting to be alive, to be a part of this third planet from the sun. We get to be a part of its days and its nights. We get to be a part of the cycling of the seasons as the earth orbits the sun. We get to be a part of the greater solar system family. We get to see the other planets, the sister planets at night, Venus and Mars, Jupiter. We're a part of that. Part of that greater cosmos. Our breath, this physical manifestation, is part of it. Our thoughts, our dreams are a part of that. Just notice. Just notice, allow, accept, and continue to soften. Begin to deepen your breath. You can start to make little motions, maybe start to wiggle fingers, wiggle toes. Bring more motion into hands, to feet, to arms, and to legs. And Gently rock your head from side to side. At some point, slowly begin to bend your knees and draw them into your torso. And then at some point, gently roll over onto one side. When you get there, stay there for a moment. Maybe cultivate some gratitude for your practice, your efforts. Cultivate some deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique manifestation on this earth. The earth, Gaia, is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you feel ready, bring yourself up to a comfortable seat. When you get there, find some rootedness in what you're sitting on. Find your center with a little bit of awareness through your torso. And then bring your hands together in front of your heart. I'll end class with an Om. Please join in or simply listen. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.